Vicky Lowe, and welcome to the Wisdom for Working Mums podcast show, where I share insights and interviews that support women to combine their family, work and life in a more successful and sustainable way. Do you ever feel like you're a fraud? That you're about to get found out? Do you live your life looking over your shoulder, waiting for someone to discover that you're not really as good as they think you are? Or do you feel like your accomplishments are just one big fluke? If so, you probably suffer with something called imposter syndrome. And you're in good company. Well-known people such as Sheryl Sandberg, Serena Williams, Jennifer Lopez, Ariana Huffington and Emma Watson have all spoken about their experiences of imposter syndrome. And it's been estimated that imposter syndrome affects a whopping 70% of us, but it tends to hit us women especially hard. And today's guest is going to share her incredible experience and expertise with us on this subject. Dr. Becky Quicke is a clinical psychologist who specialises in helping women let go of the anxiety and self-doubt that holds them back. And she's also a working mum. And this conversation with Becky was brilliant because she not only shared some refreshing and reassuring insights into this whole topic, but also gave us some really simple but profound tips on what we can do when we find ourselves in that place of self-doubt. So I hope you enjoy listening to this as much as I did. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So hop over onto Instagram, LinkedIn, the Wisdom for Working Mums Facebook page, and share your thoughts and join in the conversation around this. So I actually have a love-hate relationship with social media, but today I'm very much sitting in a love place with it because it's brought me to meet today's guest. We met through one of the social media sites and quickly realised we shared a passion for helping working mums to thrive. So I was really impressed with all of her insights and wisdom that she was sharing, and I knew she'd make a fantastic guest on Wisdom for Working Mums. So I'm really excited to welcome Dr. Becky Quicke to the show today.
Oh, thank you. It's really, really lovely. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So I think we've got an incredible conversation that's going to happen today on a subject that I think many people can relate to, which is imposter syndrome. But before we get into that, would you just mind telling people who you are or what you do and how you came to do this work?
Yeah, because this is actually a next chapter for me over the past about 12 months really. So I help ambitious women to let go of anxiety and self-doubt so that they can start or grow their businesses, progress in their careers and love their lives. But as I say, this is a next chapter which we'll very much going to focus on. But before that, for I don't know how many years now. Well, I qualified as a clinical psychologist in 2005, and it was an 8-year process to get to that point. And then I worked in the NHS for about 10 or 11 years, working with children and families, children and their parents. And kind of my niche was working with foster families and adoptive families. Okay. So, and I've just loved my work for such a long time. Worked in different trusts, and then after having my second child, I was going back from maternity leave. And unfortunately, and this is a long story, and I'm sure we could have a podcast purely on this, about work and having babies and all the rest of it. I needed a little bit of flexibility from my trust, and unfortunately was not able to, it wasn't going to work out for us and my family for me to return to that post at that time. So I had no ambitions ever to start my own business, ever. I mean, I just thought I'd be working in the NHS for the whole of my career. Was very dedicated to it. But, and this was such a pivotal point for me really, I, knew what my values were and my family as a family, what our values were. And we let them direct us, really. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to, need to go and just do my own work, really, set myself up. So after maternity leave, which you know what that's like, and, the money had run dry and had no plans to do it, and just kind of leapt, really, and launched myself into setting up my own practice. Which was that combination of, in terms of from fear to fulfillment, definitely. It was so much fear, but also was really exciting. So I set that up and did basically what I was doing in the NHS, just moved that into my practice and did that, for myself. So still working with children with developmental trauma, so with adoptive families and foster families. And that went brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. And I'm still actually doing some of that work. But last year, I had what, I know Brené Brown calls it a spiritual awakening, and it very much felt like that, or a midlife clarity. I mean, almost like a bit of a cliche. I turned 40, literally last May. Turned 40. My youngest started school, and I'd also had a kind of, a few other things. There were my soul was whispering to me, I can say with hindsight, sort of, you've got something more to, something different to kind of give to the world. And then I was walking to my practice after dropping my youngest at her first day of school. And I know it doesn't always happen like this for women, but as I say, it had been whispering. But I walked into work, and I have loved my work, absolutely. But walked in, and my gut was just sort of going round and round. I just thought, something's not right. And I just had this thought that I want to do some different work. I want to do something different. So, cut a long story short, that then, sent me into a phase of development, really, and working out what that was. And that's been pretty mega. But coming through all that, lots of self-reflection and really reflecting on my training and all the approaches that I'm very much aligned to. So I use primarily at the heart of my work is an approach called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, ACT. So was doing that a lot with myself and with the parents I was working with. And then from that has grown this new arm, which is helping really helping ambitious women. Just to help, I guess my big why is, and I know it's very similar to yours, is that there are so many women in the world that, and I'll put myself in that category as well, we hold ourselves back from singing our true song, I think. Especially when we've had children. So many layers. I felt like I'd really lost myself. It sounds a bit kind of, cliche, but I kind of lost myself under all these layers of wonderfulness of being a mum, but also all the struggles. And then, I'm helping, I feel very passionate actually about helping women really kind of rise up and embrace their potential, which I think we all need. Their families, they need it, their families need it, and the world needs it. So that's what I'm doing.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because I'm just sitting here, I can already resonate with a lot of that story, and I think many women listening to that probably can as well. And I remember speaking to somebody, and she said, it takes a maternity leave to launch a business. And at the time I thought it was a really strange comment, but then actually talking to women, that many women that actually hit probably a point like you did, where it's like, actually, how am I going to make this intersection between motherhood and my career work? And sometimes starting your own business is that way of doing it. And also hearing the journey that you've gone on, so thank you for that. So how old are your children then? You've got two, haven't you?
Yes, they are 5 and 7.
Okay, wow.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, so still little.
Yeah. So in terms of today's topic, which is the imposter syndrome, think that probably many people listening will have heard of it, maybe even used it. But could you share your definition of what it is? And so we've got a frame of kind of today's conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am actually going to come out of the closet about the imposter syndrome, which I'm very excited that I'm doing that. So I'll get onto that in a minute about what I mean about that. But the imposter syndrome, in my mind anyway, kind of there are two sides to it. There's the side of feeling not competent enough and kind of struggling with that, feeling like we're not adequate enough and that someone's going to find us out for that inadequacy and incompetency. So there's that side, kind of quite an anxious, self-doubt kind of side. And then the other side is when we do have success and do things well, we attribute that to other things like, oh, well, that was just a lucky situation or whatever that might be. Now, I always like to highlight the kind of bodies of work and the people where I kind of bring things from. So Dr. Tara Swart, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a psychiatrist who now works coaching leaders. But I really like how she alerted me to the kind of what that combination means. So on the one hand, there is this kind of anxious side of feeling like we're going to be caught out, and that leads to high levels of cortisol, which is kind of the stress hormone. And then on the other side, not enjoying the success we have, so missing out on the kind of good chemicals and neurotransmission. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a kind of, she calls it actually what does she call it? A cocktail of toxic stress, really. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it. But I guess my thing about the imposter syndrome is that I feel like I want to kind of almost come out of the closet with is that I think that it's incredibly unhelpful. And the reason why I think that, I mean, part of me thinks it's really nice when you have some struggles with thoughts and feelings and you then know that other people have those struggles as well. Absolutely. It's kind of like, oh, thank goodness, it's not just me. Yeah. So I do think that it has kind of helped a little bit with that. So people understand. I mean, you mention it to people and they're like, oh yeah, I totally get that, But I think it's kind of feeding into this part of us holding ourselves back, in that it's kind of feeding a thought or kind of a belief that there's something wrong with our thoughts and our feelings. Whereas actually, and I talk about this a lot in the workshops that I do and the one-to-one work with clients, and very much acceptance and commitment therapy and training, which is the kind of body of work that I use a lot of. We talk a lot about the evolution of the human being and how actually, and this is partly a kind of like, ooh, a bit doomy, but actually a lot of women say it's incredibly freeing, is that we are meant to have anxious thoughts. It's part of, like I say, it's part of our evolution. The amount of time from kind of caveman and cavewomen times to now, evolutionary wise, is like tiny. Yeah. And obviously the development of the world is incredible. So we still have those bodies and those systems, those nervous systems that we had back then. And those systems were set up to obviously keep us alive. So it's normal to be hypervigilant to threat, to have anxious thoughts and feelings, and it's normal to replay situations out because that kind of has kept us safe. Kind of if we'd had a fight or something, and if you think about caveman times, sort of replaying that and working out what went well, what didn't. That process is part of being a human being. So I kind of that is very much my message, really, that I spend a lot of time with, sort of exploring with women how, in a way, society has has given us this message, and I kind of almost want to hold my hands up for my own profession, because I feel like we've definitely been part of that in terms of talking about the human condition and the thoughts and feelings that we have as negative, and let's challenge those, and let's have different thought and positive thinking. And I mean, absolutely, I'm a big believer in, if something helps you and is helpful, brilliant, you kind of do that. But the women I work with, actually, when I talked to them about that, it happened last week in a workshop I was doing, I flashed up on a screen the kind of, zillions of books that sort of positive thinking, do this and overcome it and fight it. And I was, taught about this, and I was saying, this is just actually quite unhelpful, because we think we're all doing something wrong, whereas actually, no matter what you do, really, there's always going to be a kind of anxious thought that's going to pop up. I mean, I imagine even the Dalai Lama, I would really challenge the thought that he doesn't have any kind of anxious thoughts, because he's a human being. So yeah, I wonder whether it's kind of, I think it's actually an unhelpful thing, and I really want to start a kind of more thinking around, actually this is normal. So it definitely, those doubts flare up. I mean, absolutely, those doubts have flared up with me today. I'm doing a podcast, this is the first podcast I've ever done, so I'm thinking, oh my goodness, and I'm totally aware of those. I'm kind of I unhook from those thoughts and have a look at them and sort of observe them. And kind of what I work with women about is it's called psychological flexibility. Yeah. So we're on automatic pilot a lot of the time, and we need to be. But I guess I help women to have that flexibility of, first of all, being aware and observing and noticing our thoughts and feelings. So sort of stepping back and being aware of them. And then kind of, is that helping me move towards what I want, or is it not? And having that choice and that flexibility, it's not for me or anyone to say what anyone should do, but just giving women that kind of, that freedom. So that's why I say it's sort of letting go, really, not pushing it away. Yeah. I could go on and on actually about this approach, so do stop me. But
I'm just kind of drinking in all the goodness that you've said there, and I think there's several things that stick out for me. And I think the piece around recognising our evolution and saying, actually, it's not our fault. We're not doing anything wrong if we're having these kind of thoughts. It's part of our neurobiology almost, that's how we experience things, and almost giving people the permission that it's okay. And I hear your piece around think positive and just focus on the positive, and if what you focus on kind of grows. There's so much messaging out there, and like you, I not only hold my hands up for my profession, I hold hands up to the early version of me that probably sat in that place. And it's interesting because I have conversations with some of my colleagues around when I see some of this stuff pop up on social media, and my stomach just kind of goes really heavy, and around, as you say, if it's helpful for somebody, great, but often it's just another stick to beat ourselves up with, where we're like, oh gosh, actually I've had a day where I haven't thought particularly positive, so oh god, that just makes me an even worse person. So there's a lot of guilt and shame that kind of feeds.
And it would be, I mean, if that was the case, that would be so great. I mean, if only you could actually just think positive, and then that would be great. But it just doesn't happen that way. And I think that it also feeds into our sort of patriarchal society, really, because it's kind of it's quite a masculine, and I'll probably mention feminine and masculine quite a bit, and by that I don't obviously mean men and women. We all have both energies, but it's quite a masculine energy to a feminine energy, actually. So thoughts, feelings, being, this is the feminine energy that we all have, men and women. And so it's almost trying to kind of box off and kind of put that around our sort of feminine energy, really.
And I love that, because what it allows us to do is be whole, instead of kind of disassociating from those part of ourselves that can think negative and going, actually, I don't want that to be part of me because that's not good. And we end up kind of not sitting in the wholeness of ourselves and the truth of ourselves. So
absolutely,
this is all music to
but
my
also
ears.
the other thing is that it makes complete sense that we don't want to have those thoughts and feelings as well. I talk a lot about that, and having a thought that's holding, that we're not good enough, and all those kind of thoughts make us feel, uncomfortable. And of course, we're human beings, and we are amazing problem solvers. That's why we're, humans, and we have a part of the brain that means that we can problem solve. And actually, a lot of the women that I work with are phenomenal problem solvers. Absolutely. And we want to keep that. That's an incredible skill. And what a lot of us do is we then try and problem solve our emotions. We try and problem solve them away. Whereas actually kind of, being willing to have them and not kind of push them away and dissociate from them and not allow them to be. That's actually the uncomfortable feeling. So there's a lot of research to show that the actual initial anxious thought that we have, that doesn't cause the huge discomfort. It's then the struggle to kind of push it away that causes the discomfort feeling.
Yeah, that would make absolute sense. So when I've researched this topic, there seems to be really conflicting information on whether women experience it more than men. And I'm wondering, what's your view on that? I'm no major expert on the differences between men and women on it, although obviously being a woman and working mainly with women, I have much more knowledge of in experience in that area. I'm not sure really. I definitely know of men and women who, and as I say, I think it's it's part of the feminine energy, and I think that men definitely experience this. And I'd say probably it would be the men who are more kind of self-aware of them having to, the masculine and feminine energies. Not that they may say that to themselves, but they do. And I actually think they make incredible, employees and leaders to have both. And they do then talk about, absolutely, when I stepped up into that role, oh my goodness, I felt like I was going to be found out and all the rest of it. So I definitely, men and women do experience it. But I definitely, it's so common, in us women, really. And I think there is something that I've experienced with my work with supporting women coming back from maternity leave. It seems to, that mix of taking some time out, however long that somebody takes out, having a child, the impact on identity seems to add almost fuel onto the fire, is my experience, that pops up a little bit more after becoming a mum.
I mean, just kind of thinking about that now, really, I think that motherhood is an incredible power, and I think that possibly women are the kind of their intuition and their kind of, it's a different state, it's a different level, isn't it, when you become a mum, and I think that possibly that kind of is speaking, you're almost stepping into your feminine power. Even more so, and so it would make sense that then we would have, a kind of those doubts and those, and of course it's about it puts, obviously childbirth and then keeping a baby alive and going and growing, and this is evolutionary sort of core stuff. It's going to put your body into, it has to put your body into that state of survival. So of course those thoughts are going to be there more regularly, and that's again where I just really want to share how it's not only that it's kind of normal, but it's healthy. Yeah. It's really healthy to have them. It's what we do with them that makes a difference, really. And sort of trying not to have them definitely perpetuates the cycle and makes and kind of increases the intensity of them, really.
You get into almost a debate and a fight with it.
Oh yeah, and just to make this really clear, this happens all the time, especially in my head.
Yeah.
You know, there's no getting to a point of, okay, well now I can, you know, step back and let go and of those thoughts and feelings. That if I get to that point, I'll think that I'm not a human being. You know, they're there, and it's very cyclical. Everything's very cyclical. In terms of women kind of embracing their potential in businesses and careers, there's definitely sort of cycles that we go through in terms of feeling that fear. And I work with women around those fears and being aware of them, letting go, working out of how to move in the direction of what matters to them. That's the path to fulfillment. And you feel the fulfillment. And then, of course, you step out of your comfort zone. And then, of course, the fears come back because you're stepping out of your comfort zone. That's to be expected. And, you know, so it's like a cycle. Yeah. It's not a kind of, we're here. Because women often ask me that. One woman asked me last week, how long will it take, you know, to kind of develop these skills? And of course, at first, it is a new sort of way of, you know, being. And it's taken me a long time, definitely, to kind of really use these skills regularly of stepping back and letting go. But of course, we never get to the end point.
Yeah.
And
but hopefully with this awareness that you're going to share with us today, it's almost an upward spiral of success. Though, because you'll go through the cycle, but because you've been through it before, you might have the skills or strategies that help you navigate it and be able to observe it and not get stuck with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really freeing process. That's how I feel, and that's how the women I work with describe it. I mean, I remember when I did my first training with acceptance and commitment therapy, having been on a very traditional CBT doctorate, where I used to sit there, and I'm actually going to say this now, I used to sit there and think, the CBT of the kind of, you have a thought and kind of looking for evidence for it and against it and trying to kind of take away the symptoms, trying to move people towards a place of not having anxiety or you know, I struggle with that. And talk about imposter syndrome, I just was sat there thinking, what is wrong with me? You know, this doesn't fit. I'll try and use it myself and it didn't fit. Then I trained in, it's called like the third wave of cognitive therapies. So it's kind of a development of CBT ACT from contextual behavioural science. And I remember going to that, I was like, oh, this makes so much sense.
And I'm just noticing your body.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
oh, thank goodness. Actually, it's kind of, I'm not striving to not have those anxious thoughts. Actually, I'm striving to do what matters to me. Yeah. Which is a big piece of work in itself, working out what matters, and I'm moving towards that, and I'm taking my stuff with me, you know. Brilliant. So, yeah.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're going, oh my God, absolutely can relate to having imposter syndrome, and they're probably going, so tell me, what can I do about it? So you've already started to allude to some of the strategies or some of the philosophy about this. Would you mind sharing a bit more about how somebody listening might be able to let go or work with that imposter syndrome in a more helpful way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really mindful of the women I work with, and I imagine the women that listen to this show, I'm one of them, so I know, you know, I kind of get that, in that we have so much kind of going on, we've so much on our plate, so many levels of responsibilities. So in a way, I'm always really mindful of not wanting to kind of overwhelm people. You know, when I do work one-to-one, there are different levels of working, really, and you know, we might do some kind of some deeper work around, actually, I will guide and support women to be able to feel the feelings that they have. It's not always easy. So there are phases that I guide women through And the kind of foundational phase is the kind of phase 1 and phase 2 are very, very, it's like chicken and egg really. So the kind of foundational phase is around the relationship you have with yourself, so that yourself is a safe harbour to go into. You know, so many of us have we really beat ourselves up, you know. We criticise ourselves so much and we're really harsh on ourselves. And that puts our bodies into a threat state. So that means you are more likely to have those anxious thoughts and feelings. Okay. So a piece of work, one area that I kind of start with women is that really, and that's, you know, again, it's not an overnight thing, but absolutely it's not, but it's kind of really learning to have a kind of in tune positive relationship with yourself, and so whatever that might be really. I mean, for me, I mean, like I say, last year, it was a bit bonkers really, but I did feel like I was waking up to myself or reconnecting with myself. But even things like, and this is so basic and straightforward last year that I was sort of doing, I was just really reconnecting with what I really like to eat and the things I like to do. And, you know, and thinking back to when I was younger, what really got me going that I'd forgotten. I knew exactly what my children like to eat and all the rest of it, you know. But and that I know it sounds really simple, but that for me anyway was my, and I talk to women about that, like, let's really reconnect with who you are. So very much there's kind of that piece really. And then the kind of next phase, which I've already talked quite a lot about, is this psychological flexibility. It's a skill to unhook from those anxious thoughts and feelings and decide. It's then what's often described, Russ Harris is a kind of a really helpful kind of go-to guy around this kind of work. He talks about the choice point. So it's then a choice point, but you need to be able to decide, is that thought and that feeling, is it helpful to me? Is it taking me towards what matters to me? And it might be brilliant, go with it, you know, or is it not? Actually, it's not helping me. So it's having that flexibility.
So I've heard you say quite a few times about this unhooking to give you the flexibility and almost becoming the observer. And I sometimes talk about it being the privileged position where you can actually truly see what's going on. It's almost like a fly on the wall. If somebody's not come across that before or kind of goes, oh, that would be great, but I have no idea. Is there like a simple tip or technique that you can share?
There is actually, and this is... I'm just putting this together actually so I've got a new website that's just been launched, and this is going to be the kind of something that people can download. So I'll go through it verbally. So this takes, and I call it the 7 words I can't remember the exact title, but 7 words to letting go of your anxiety in 1 minute. So it's, and when I do this, I work with businesses. I go into businesses as well as kind of groups of women, and I do this, and they're like, okay, that is, anyway, they find it really useful. So the first step is to be aware of a particular thought, a self-doubt thought or an anxious thought. So say, for example, an example could be, I'm a complete idiot. What an idiot! I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. Okay. So you kind of got that thought, and you sort of think about. So you say that to yourself. I am an idiot. Oh, I am an idiot. And you sort of think about how that makes you feel. And then the next step is to put just a couple of words in front of that, which is, my mind is saying I'm an idiot. Or my mind is telling me I'm an idiot. Okay, my mind is telling me that I'm an idiot. And then the final one is, I'm noticing my mind telling me that I'm an idiot. I mean, how does that...
I can already hear in your voice, it lightens and softens, and you can hold it, but hold it lighter.
Yeah. For me, just doing that then, and I don't know how you experienced it, but it's step back, my mind's telling me I'm an idiot, or my mind's telling me I'm a crap mum. You know, I'm a crap mum. Yeah, that comes through my mind, and then I go, my mind's telling me I'm a crap mum. I'm noticing that my mind's telling me I'm a crap. I can feel myself stepping back from it, and it just gives me that space, and it gives you that space and freedom of unhooking. We are not our thoughts and feelings. We are the energy and the observer that can watch those thoughts and feelings. So giving yourself that space and freedom, then you physiologically do kind of, become more regulated. And then you just think, okay, is that helpful to me or is that not helpful to me, So that's one very simple,
Brilliant. So what other advice could you give to somebody that might be listening to this going, oh my God, experience this? That's a great way of unhooking myself to kind of give myself that flexibility of noticing it. What other strategies do you find really useful for somebody that might be stuck with their imposter syndrome?
One kind of area as well to kind of really focus on to kind of let go of the imposter syndrome, that's key really, because it helps to navigate what we're actually doing. Like I say, often, with all of us, we kind of want to move in a direction towards feeling fulfilled.
Yeah.
There's never going to be a point where we feel happy all the time. That's unrealistic. But a sense of fulfillment is kind of where we want to head. So it's knowing what really, really matters to us. Which sounds like, just work out what matters to you. Well, that is very, very difficult and can be quite a deep piece of work. And the way that we do it from the ACT approach is to think about the personal qualities that you most want to express in your life. And that might change, might be different in the different areas of your life. There's being with your family, there's being at work, there's being with friends, it might vary. And it changes anyway. It's not like, these are my kind of core values now and that's it forever. They change. But I have found it incredibly useful to know what my core values are, so that when I am unhooking from those thoughts and feelings and deciding if they're workable and helpful or not, I know where I'm moving towards, and purposefully talk about a direction, not a destination.
Brilliant, yeah.
If we feel like there's a destination to get to, then, we just want to get there.
And we're a work in progress, aren't we?
Yeah,
it's like, it's our life's work.
But the other thing I wanted to mention about the kind of, advice to give, that I have to actually work on quite hard with myself. I'm a really enthusiastic person, and those that know me know that I get really enthusiastic. I'm like, there's this, do this, do that. And actually, I'm working on this, and I'm finding this is helpful in my work to unhook from that, because I know that all of us, especially working mums, have the inspiration and the stars within us. So each of your listener, they have, I would not want to say, go and do this. I really, really don't, because it's about helping women tune into their own dreams and power. And like I say, those stars, I've gone all goosebump even thinking about that. I really, really feel so passionate about this. And love guiding women to really get to know what that is inside of them, and that to kind of drive them forwards. And I love giving them those skills of being able to go forth without holding ourselves back, which I have definitely done most of my career. I now look back and I think, on paper it looks like, oh right, okay, but I know what it felt like in there. And I have loved my work, and I think I've done great work. But I've definitely held myself back,
and I think there'll be many, many people listening to this that will go, yeah, if I'm really honest with myself, I have as well. So you've shared some really brilliant insights and some really practical tools as well that I think can make a difference to people. So if there's just one thing that you hope somebody listening to this podcast takes away from listening to you.
It's tricky, isn't it? And I think that, part of me, there's so many parts talking right now, so they're, I can see all the thoughts. They're there. So there's a part of me that really wants to emphasise the unhooking, simply because I've mentioned that to people in a workshop. They've just kind of heard that very briefly, and then I've sort of seen them since, and they say, oh yeah, at work we'll say, oh, unhook from that thought, and I think, oh wow, that's such a simple thing and so helpful. So part of me wants to say that, but actually I think the bigger kind of connected part of me wants to kind of re-emphasize what I've just said, really, in that that all of the women listening, all of us, we have within us, we kind of think, oh, we can't kind of live our dreams and what have you, but actually there are dreams within us. It's not about doing some kind of big fancy thing, but it's about what really, really matters to you, and kind of what are those stars within you, and knowing what they are and embracing those. And if women need guides along the way, I definitely do. Most of us do, whoever that might be, friends or someone professional, have that guide to help you let go of the kind of doubt that holds you back, so that you can really embrace your potential and enjoy the short life that we have. Brilliant. And also our families just, that is a big driver. I haven't really mentioned that a lot, but it's a huge driver for me, having worked with children for such a long time and having my own children. This is what we need to pave the way for our children to also reach for their own stars, and not get sucked in and hooked in and struggles with those thoughts and feelings.
And I think that's why I feel like I'm a kindred spirit with you, because I think there's this piece around good mothers are selfless, and I think that actually does not set up and pave the way, as you say. We need to show our children what it is like to recognise what our dreams are, go after them, even with the anxiety that creates, and show them what that
I used to think, when I had my children, I honestly thought that mother's guilt, with a capital M and a capital G, I thought it was a thing. I was like, oh yeah, I've got, almost like imposter syndrome, oh yeah, I've got mother's guilt, and so every time I did anything away from them, I was like, oh yeah, I've got mother's guilt, blah blah blah. And I now know, oh my goodness, it's not a thing. It's a thought that I have, and I can unhook. Yeah. And I hugely benefit from that. And then I can really replenish myself doing whatever I need to do. And then, of course, I am then much more able to be the mum I want to be. And I talk about this with my children a lot. My daughter, one evening, not that long ago, she used to say, at night time, as it always is, I'm worried about this, mummy, and, what have you. I can't remember exactly what she said. I was like, oh, that's really good. That's because that means you're a human being. Like, that's what it means to be a human being. We all have those thoughts. I have those. And her body just went, ugh. And then she went, night. She went to sleep, and it was like, I knew that the anxious thought wasn't the issue. It was her thinking there's something wrong with her for having that anxious thought. And I was like, it's completely normal. We all have them, and it's okay.
Oh, what an amazing gift to give to your daughter. So, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, Becky, because I'm sure kind of just having this short insight into you, they want to learn more, where can they find out more about you, whether it be your website or social media?
I guess my website, which is, relatively new, so that's exciting. So my website's a good place to go. And I do have a Facebook page, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Brilliant. And I'll put the links to that in the show notes, which will be on the website. People can click through, and I'll also put some links to the people that you've mentioned and some of the work that you've mentioned.
And I really welcome email. If anyone's listening and is just kind of like, whatever, I am literally, my arms are open. I'm really happy to respond to emails. You know, I don't work with the masses. I just want to kind of work with a small number of people. So, but if people just want a quick question or what have you, or you mentioned this, can you tell me where to go to look for that? Absolutely, get in touch, send me an email.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom. If you've enjoyed this episode of Wisdom for Working Mums, please share it on social media and with your friends and family. I'd love to connect with you too. So if you head over to wisdomforworkingmums.co.uk, you'll find a link on how to do this. And if you love the show and really want to support it, please go to iTunes, write a review and subscribe. You'll be helping another working mum find this resource too. Thanks so much for listening.